Poor girl sits wrong table on blind date, never thought he's millionaire, and falls love with her. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It is quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let us return to our main character. The soft hum of conversation and the faint clinking of silverware filled the air inside a warm New York City restaurant. Golden light spilled over polished tables, and every plate looked like a work of art. It was the kind of place where people spoke in low voices and waited for their lives to change. But for Emma Brooks, her life already felt like a quiet storm. She stood outside the glass door, her reflection caught between the glow of the sign and the rain-streaked street behind her. Her dress was secondhand, her shoes scuffed, and her hands trembled as she clutched her phone. She whispered to herself, "Table 7, I can do this." She had promised her best friend, Jenny, that she would go through with the blind date, no matter how nervous she felt. Taking a deep breath, Emma stepped inside. The warmth hit her cheeks, her heartbeat quickened, and her eyes searched the room. Every table looked perfect, every guest well-dressed. Then she saw him. A man in a navy suit sat alone near the back, focused on his phone, the light catching the edges of his dark hair. He looked calm, confident, out of her league, but that had to be him. Emma forced a smile, walked over, and said softly, "Hi, you must be Kevin. I am Emma. It is so nice to meet you." The man looked up, startled. For a heartbeat, he seemed unsure whether to correct her. This was Liam Parker, a technology entrepreneur who had come here for a canceled business dinner, not a date. But something about her voice, nervous yet kind, made him pause. He could have told her she was at the wrong table. Instead, he smiled faintly and said, "Right, blind dates are something else." Emma laughed, her nerves spilling out through her words. "Tell me about it. Jenny has been trying to set me up for months. I am just glad I did not chicken out this time." Liam leaned back, intrigued despite himself. "What do you do, Emma?" "I am a waitress," she said, her fingers playing with the edge of her napkin. "Not glamorous, but it pays most of the bills. What about you?" "I work in technology," he answered lightly. Her eyes brightened. "Like computers and apps? That is cool. I am terrible with that stuff." He smiled again, quietly studying her. Her honesty felt new, untouched by the filters he saw every day in boardrooms and charity galas. She was real. The conversation drifted easily, laughter soft and awkward in the best way. Emma talked about art, her dream of opening a small studio, and the funny customers she met at the diner. Liam listened more than he spoke, his phone forgotten on the table. For the first time in months, he was not a name in the headlines. He was just a man sharing dinner with a woman who did not know or care how rich he was. Then, just as Emma lifted her glass of water, her phone buzzed. A message flashed across the screen. "Hey Emma, I am at table 7. Looking forward to meeting you. Kevin." Her breath caught. The words blurred. Slowly, she looked up at Liam, her cheeks turning crimson. "You are not Kevin, are you?" Liam hesitated. "No," he said quietly. "Oh my God," Emma whispered, standing so fast that her chair scraped against the floor. "I am so sorry. This is so embarrassing." "Wait," Liam said, also standing, but she was already fumbling for her coat. "Emma, it is fine." She shook her head, mortified. "I cannot believe this happened. I am so sorry." And just like that, she turned and hurried out into the cold night, her reflection vanishing against the glass door. Liam stood still, watching her leave, a strange warmth lingering in the space she had just filled. He had not planned to meet anyone tonight, yet somehow, that brief mistake felt more honest than most of his entire life. He sat back down slowly, staring at the empty seat across from him. For the first time in a long time, he wished he had stopped her. The night after that awkward encounter, New York City glimmered outside Liam Parker's penthouse windows. Normally, the view calmed him, the steady hum of traffic, the glow of the skyline, but tonight, his mind refused to rest. He kept seeing her face, the girl with secondhand shoes and a nervous smile. The way she had looked at him, unguarded, honest, like he was just another man. He had not realized how rare that feeling was until she ran out the door. He sat at his desk, the half-finished glass of whiskey, untouched beside a folder of merger documents. His phone buzzed with messages from his assistant, but he ignored them. The world knew Liam Parker as a calculated tech visionary, a man who made decisions by logic alone. But the logic of his heart tonight was a mess. Across town, in a small apartment above a laundromat, Emma Brooks collapsed onto her couch, her cheeks still burning from humiliation. The radiator hissed weakly. Her roommate, Jenny, looked up from her laptop, smirking. "That bad, huh?" "Worse," Emma groaned, pulling a throw pillow over her face. "I sat at the wrong table. The guy was not even Kevin." Jenny burst out laughing. "You did not." "I did. And I talked for like 30 minutes straight. He was nice, though. Really nice. But still not Kevin." "Maybe that is a sign," Jenny teased. "Maybe the universe is telling you to stop letting me set you up." Emma sighed, half laughing. "Yeah, maybe the universe should mind its own business." But as she turned her head, she saw her sketchbook lying on the coffee table. Inside, the napkin she had doodled on earlier was gone. She frowned. She must have left it at the restaurant. One more embarrassment to add to the list. Outside, snow began to fall lightly over the city. Liam watched it drift past the window, thinking about that same napkin. He had found it under his plate, her quick pencil lines catching his jaw, his expression. She had talent, raw and unpolished, yet full of life. Without quite knowing why, he slipped the napkin into a drawer instead of throwing it away. The next morning, sunlight cut through the blinds of his office. Claire, his assistant, stood at the door, holding his schedule. "You canceled the Rothman lunch again?" she asked. "Yes," he said without looking up. "Liam, that is the third time this month. Are you feeling all right?" He hesitated, then admitted quietly. "I met someone last night, accidentally." Claire blinked. "Accidentally?" "She thought I was someone else. We talked. She does not know who I am. For the first time in years, I felt like a real person." Claire's eyebrows lifted slightly. "Do you plan to see her again?" He looked out the window. "I do not even know where to start." Meanwhile, Emma trudged through her double shift at the diner. The scent of burnt coffee clung to her apron. A regular customer complained about the temperature of his soup, and her manager scolded her for mixing up table orders. Still, she smiled through it, because that was what she did: smile, serve, and keep moving. During her short break, she sat by the window, sketchbook in hand. Her drawings were mostly quick sketches of people who passed by, couples holding hands, a mother pushing a stroller, an old man reading a newspaper. She told herself it was practice, but deep down, she knew she was trying to draw the man she met last night from memory. She could not remember every detail, only the way his voice softened when he said, "Right, blind dates are something else." It replayed in her head more times than she wanted to admit. That evening, as the diner closed, Emma stepped out into the cold night. The neon sign flickered behind her. She tightened her coat, wishing she had gloves. The streets were wet from melting snow. Just as she turned the corner, a sleek black car rolled to a slow stop across the street. Inside, Liam sat behind tinted glass, watching her from a distance. He had tracked down the restaurant receipt, called the manager, and learned the waitress's name, Emma Brooks. It felt intrusive, but his curiosity had turned into something heavier, something he could not ignore. She disappeared down the block, unaware of the man watching from the car. Liam exhaled, a mix of guilt and longing tightening in his chest. He told himself he would only make sure she got home safe, nothing more. But as he watched her disappear into the glow of a corner store, he already knew the truth. He wanted to see her again, not as Liam Parker, the CEO of Parker Tech, but as the man she had mistaken him for. A man who could sit at the wrong table and, somehow, feel right for the first time in years. 2 days passed, and the city carried on as if nothing had happened. But for Liam Parker, every passing moment carried the same image: Emma Brooks laughing nervously across that restaurant table, her eyes full of warmth and wonder. He tried to drown the thought in meetings, numbers, and polite conversations about profit margins, but her voice kept echoing in his head. On the third morning, he left his office early, something his staff had not seen him do in years. The streets of downtown Manhattan buzzed with life. He passed food carts, honking taxis, and bundled strangers hurrying through the cold. He did not know exactly where he was going until he saw it a small diner with fogged windows and the smell of coffee drifting onto the sidewalk. The same diner printed on the receipt he had tucked into his coat pocket. Inside, Emma stood behind the counter pouring coffee for a customer. Her hair was tied back loosely, a pencil tucked behind one ear. Her apron slightly smudged with flour. She looked tired but alive in a way that caught him off guard. When the crowd thinned, Liam approached the counter. "Excuse me," he said, his tone softer than usual. Emma looked up, polite but distracted. "Hey there, welcome to Daisy's Diner. What can I get for you?" He smiled faintly. "A cup of black coffee, please, and maybe a chance to say sorry." She froze, the coffee pot halfway in the air. Her eyes widened as she recognized him. "Oh my, it is you, the wrong table guy." "Guilty," he said with a small chuckle. "And I wanted to return something." From the inside of his coat, he pulled out a folded napkin. The pencil lines were a little smudged, but the drawing was unmistakable, her quick sketch of him. Emma blinked, her embarrassment returning full force. "You kept that?" "I did," he said. "It is good. You have real talent." "Oh?" She laughed shyly, wiping her hands on her apron. "It was just a doodle. You are being polite." "I do not waste time being polite," Liam replied. "I meant what I said." For a moment, silence hung between them. Then Emma poured his coffee and leaned slightly on the counter. "So, what brings you here, really? You do not look like the diner type." He hesitated before answering. "Maybe I just wanted to talk again. The other night ended too quickly." Her lips curved into a smile. "Well, you are lucky. I am on break in 10 minutes. 10 minutes later, they sat in a small booth near the window. Outside, the world rushed by, but inside, the air felt suspended. Emma told him about growing up in Queens, about her father leaving when she was 12, and how her mother had raised her and her sister by working 2 jobs. "I started drawing to keep myself company," she said, flipping open her sketchbook. "Now it is just what I do when things feel too heavy." Liam watched her flip through the pages, portraits of strangers, city streets, children feeding pigeons. Every sketch pulsed with life. "You ever think of showing these?" he asked. She shook her head. "No gallery is interested in a waitress with paint stains on her sleeves. Maybe they just have not met the right waitress yet." His words were quiet but sincere. A faint blush spread across her cheeks. She quickly changed the subject. "What about you? You said you work in technology. What does that mean exactly?" He paused, choosing his words carefully. "I design systems that help people connect. It is complicated, but it pays the bills." She laughed softly. "Sounds mysterious. So you are a tech guy, huh? Figures. You had that calm, I fix problems energy." Liam smiled, but said nothing more. He could have told her everything about Parker Tech, the board meetings, the millions of dollars that moved with every decision, but something inside him wanted to stay in this version of the world, where he was just Liam, not a headline. When Emma's break ended, she stood and tucked her sketchbook under her arm. "It was nice seeing you again, Liam." "Likewise," he said, standing too. "Maybe I can see more of your drawings sometime?" "Maybe," she said, her tone playful but unsure. "If you promise not to sit at the wrong table again?" He smiled, watching her disappear behind the counter. The bell above the diner door jingled softly as he left, stepping into the crisp afternoon air. That night, Emma returned home with an unfamiliar lightness in her chest. She placed her sketchbook on the windowsill, staring at the skyline beyond. For the first time in a long while, her dreams did not feel foolish. Somewhere out there, a man who worked in technology believed she was talented. And across the city, Liam looked at the napkin drawing once more, before setting it carefully beside his laptop. It was more than paper, now it was a seed of something new, something he had not felt in years. He whispered to himself, "Emma Brooks." The name sounded softer than any symphony of the city below. A week passed, and the city began to thaw from winter's grip. The gray snow melted into streams along the curbs, and sunlight spilled over the skyline like a quiet promise. Every morning, Emma Brooks walked to the diner before sunrise, sketchbook tucked under her arm, the cold biting at her fingers. Her routine was the same: open the shop, pour coffee, serve regulars, but lately, her thoughts drifted elsewhere. She found herself glancing at the door more often than usual. half expecting the tall man with the kind smile to return. She told herself not to get her hopes up. Men like him, calm, self-assured, probably successful, did not orbit around women like her. Yet deep down, something inside her wished for one more conversation, one more hour, where she could forget everything else. That wish was answered on a Thursday afternoon. The bell over the diner door chimed, and there he was, Liam Parker, in a dark coat, a faint smile on his face. He looked out of place among the chatter and clatter of the diner, but the warmth in his eyes made him blend right in. "Back again?" Emma teased, trying to hide her surprise. "I could say the coffee is good," Liam said, sliding onto a stool at the counter. "But I think it is the company." She laughed. "Smooth answer. So, what can I get you today?" "Whatever you recommend," he replied. As she prepared his order, their small talk slipped into something easy. They talked about New York traffic, about art galleries she dreamed of visiting, about how he spent most of his time working and not living. When her shift ended, Liam waited outside under the diner awning, his hands tucked in his pockets. "Do you want a coffee somewhere that is not work?" he asked, his tone gentle. Emma hesitated, glancing at the sky. "I cannot afford those fancy cafes you probably like." "Then I will follow your lead," he said simply. "You pick the place." She smiled at that. "Fine. I know a quiet spot near Riverside Park. They have decent coffee and a view that almost makes up for the noise." They walked side by side, the wind brushing through her hair. The cafe was small, tucked between a laundromat and a bookstore. Its windows steamed with warmth. Inside, they found a corner table, and for a while, time seemed to slow down. Emma showed him a few sketches she had drawn that week, faces of customers, a couple dancing in the street, a stray cat sitting on a fire escape. "You really see people," Liam said softly. "Most of us forget to look." She smiled shyly. "It is easier to draw them than to talk to them." "Maybe that is why you draw so well," he said. "You listen without speaking." Emma sipped her coffee, studying him. "You talk like someone who has seen too much of the world." "Maybe I have," he admitted. "But not the parts that matter." There was something about the way he said it, quiet but full of truth, that made her chest tighten. For a long moment, they just looked at each other, the city humming outside. When they left the cafe, the sun was dipping low, painting the sky orange and rose. They strolled through Riverside Park, their steps slow and unhurried. Children laughed in the distance, and the air smelled faintly of earth and salt from the nearby river. "This is my favorite place," Emma said. "Whenever things get too heavy, I come here. It helps me remember that not everything beautiful has to last forever." Liam glanced at her, his voice low. "You sound like a poet." "I sound like a waitress who reads too many art books," she joked, though her smile faltered. "Life is complicated. You work hard, you dream harder, and sometimes that still is not enough." He stopped walking. "Emma," he said, his voice suddenly serious, "you have no idea how wrong you are about not being enough." The words hung in the air, carried by the wind. She turned toward him, unsure what to say. Before she could speak, her phone buzzed in her pocket, her sister calling again about overdue rent and their mother's medicine. Reality rushed back in, heavy and sharp. "I have to go," she murmured. He nodded, understanding in his eyes. "Can I see you again?" She hesitated, torn between the warmth she felt and the life waiting to collapse back home. "Maybe," she said softly. "If the universe wants to repeat another mistake." As she walked away, Liam watched her silhouette fade against the evening light. Something inside him shifted, something he had not felt in years. He knew he could not let this connection disappear, not again. Back at her apartment, Emma sat by the window sketching the view of the park. Each pencil stroke carried a quiet ache, a longing she tried to hide from herself. She did not know that across the city, in a high-rise office filled with glass and silence, Liam Parker stood before that same view, thinking of the same girl, and wondering how a single mistake at a dinner table had turned into the most meaningful thing in his life. The next weekend, sunlight streamed through the narrow windows of Emma's apartment as she packed her sketchbook into her worn canvas bag. She was heading to a small art fair in Brooklyn, a place where local artists sold handmade crafts and watercolor prints. It was not glamorous, but it was her world, real, imperfect, and hers. As she set up her modest booth, A familiar voice came from behind her. "I thought I might find you here." She turned, startled. Liam Parker stood there, hands in his coat pockets, a smile tugging at the corner of his lips. "Do you follow me everywhere now?" she asked, half amused, half nervous. "Only when I have good reason," he said. "You told me to see your drawings, remember?" She laughed softly, her nerves easing. "Well, you are looking at them. Welcome to my empire of paper and dreams." He studied each sketch with quiet attention: city skylines, street musicians, children feeding pigeons by the river. His expression softened. "These are incredible, Emma. They feel alive." She shrugged, embarrassed. "They are just sketches. People buy them for $10 to hang in coffee shops." "That is their mistake," he said. "They should be in a gallery." Emma smiled at the thought, but her eyes clouded a little. "I do not think galleries are for people like me." Liam looked at her then, really looked, and something in his chest tightened. "You would be surprised what belongs in a gallery," he said quietly. As the afternoon wore on, she noticed how easily he blended into her world. He carried boxes, fetched coffee, and chatted with the other artists. There was no trace of arrogance, only kindness. When the fair ended, he walked her home through streets painted with golden light. "You are full of surprises, Liam," she said. "So are you," he replied, "and I do not plan to stop discovering them." That night, Emma sat by the window again, flipping open her sketchbook. She drew the park, the booths, and a man standing beside her in the sunlight. For the first time, she signed her name boldly beneath the drawing Emma Brooks and whispered to herself, "Maybe this is what right feels like." 2 weeks later, the city was glowing with spring lights as Emma hurried through the doors of the Metropolitan Hall. Her friend from the art fair had invited her to help serve at a charity gala, a night she thought would be nothing more than carrying trays and smiling politely. She wore a borrowed black dress, her sketchbook left at home. It felt like another world: polished marble floors, chandeliers like crystal rain, and guests who spoke in quiet laughter about investments and foundations. She balanced a tray of champagne glasses when a familiar voice drifted from the stage. "Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us tonight. Your generosity helps bring art and education to communities across New York City." Emma froze, her eyes lifted toward the podium. The man under the spotlight was Liam Parker. For a heartbeat, the room disappeared. His suit was sharp, his voice calm and commanding. Cameras flashed as the announcer added, "Our guest of honor and benefactor, Mr. Liam Parker, CEO of Parker Tech." Her breath caught in her throat. CEO. The word echoed inside her head like thunder. Every conversation replayed the way he had dodged questions about his work, his quiet confidence, the car she once saw waiting for him outside the diner. He had never told her. As applause filled the hall, Liam's eyes found hers in the crowd. The tray in her hands trembled, the glasses clinking softly. Their gazes locked, his full of guilt and hope, hers full of shock and disbelief. She turned quickly, setting the tray down before the shaking gave her away. She needed air. She needed space to think. Liam stepped down from the stage, weaving through the crowd, but by the time he reached the back corridor, she was gone. Outside, the night air bit at her skin as she stood beneath the golden lights of the entrance, her heart pounding. The man she had trusted, the one who made her believe again, had been living a lie. Back inside the hall, Liam stared at the door she had just walked through, realizing that the truth he had feared most had finally caught up with him. The secret he had hidden to feel normal had now cost him the only person who ever made him feel human. The night wind whipped around Emma as she stepped out of the gala hall, her heels clicking against the pavement. The city lights shimmered around her, but everything felt blurred, distant, unreal. Her chest ached with disbelief. The man she thought she knew, the quiet tech guy who carried boxes at her art fair, was the man whose name flashed across billboards. Liam Parker, the billionaire she had seen on magazine covers while waiting tables. She stopped at the edge of the plaza, her hands shaking. The memory of their coffee dates, the long walks, and his soft laughter replayed in her mind, now painted over with the sharp color of betrayal. Behind her, the doors opened, and footsteps echoed. "Emma!" His voice carried through the cold air. She turned, her eyes glistening. "Do not," she said quietly. "Do not come closer." Liam froze. his breath visible in the night air. "Please, let me explain." Explain?" she repeated, her voice breaking. "Explain what? That you lied to me since the first day we met? That you watched me struggle while you live in a world of glass and gold?" "It was never about that," he said desperately. "I did not mean to deceive you. I just wanted to be me. Not the man people bow to. Not the name they chase. With you, I could breathe." Emma's eyes filled with tears. "You could have told me the truth, Liam. I do not care about your money, but I do care about honesty." He took a cautious step forward. "I was afraid. Every time I have shown someone who I am, they changed. I could not bear to lose what we had before it even began." She shook her head. "You already lost it." Silence stretched between them, heavy and raw. The music from the gala drifted faintly through the doors, mocking them with its elegance. "I meant every word I said to you," Liam whispered. "Every moment was real." Emma laughed bitterly. "Real? You built our friendship on a lie. You let me think you were struggling just like me. Do you have any idea how humiliating that feels?" "I never meant to make you feel small," he said softly. "You were the only one who made me feel human again." Tears spilled down her cheeks. "I do not want to be your reminder that you have a heart, Liam. I wanted a partner, not a project." For a moment, neither of them spoke. The city noise filled the space between them, the honking cars, the hum of streetlights, the faint laughter of strangers who had no idea how much a heart could break in one night. Finally, Emma took a step back. "Goodbye, Liam." He reached out, but she turned away before his hand could touch her. The soft click of her heels faded down the street until she disappeared into the darkness. Liam stood there, staring at the empty sidewalk. The weight of his choices pressed down on him, heavier than any corporate deal he had ever signed. He had built his empire on control, but love, it turned out, could not be negotiated. Inside the gala, his assistant approached quietly. "Mr. Parker, the press is waiting for your statement." He looked back toward the door where Emma had vanished and said in a low voice, "Tell them the event is over." That night, alone in his penthouse, Liam sat by the window, the city glittering below like a universe he no longer belonged to. On the table beside him lay her old napkin sketch, the lines faint but still visible. He traced it with his fingers, his throat tightening. For the first time in years, the man who had everything realized how completely empty everything felt without the one person who had never wanted his fortune, only his truth. 3 weeks passed. Spring had warmed the city, but for Emma, the air still carried the chill of that night. She threw herself into work at the diner, avoiding the news, avoiding any thought of Liam Parker. Yet his face seemed to find her everywhere, on bus ads, on business magazines at the counter, even in the reflection of the coffee pot. One morning, as she was finishing her shift, a letter arrived. It was cream-colored, embossed with gold trim, her name written in careful handwriting. Inside was a single card that read, "The Art of Emma Brooks, opening night, Saturday at 7 o'clock, Riverside Gallery." Her heart pounded. She thought it must be a mistake. But at the bottom, in small letters, were the words, "Curated by Liam Parker." That Saturday, she stood outside the gallery in a borrowed dress, uncertain whether to go in. Through the glass, she saw the soft glow of lights and a crowd mingling among the paintings. Taking a deep breath, she stepped inside. The walls were lined with her work, her sketches, her watercolors, even the napkin drawing she had made that first night. Each piece was framed beautifully, with her name in elegant gold letters. She covered her mouth in shock. Then she saw him. Liam stood near the back, dressed simply this time. No cameras, no press, just him. When their eyes met, he did not move closer. He simply said, "You deserve to be seen, Emma. Not because of me, but because of you." Her throat tightened. "Why would you do this?" "Because I was wrong," he said. "I tried to protect what we had by hiding who I was. But love cannot survive behind lies. This is me being honest, and this," he gestured to the gallery, "is me making it right." Tears filled her eyes. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Then Emma stepped forward and whispered, "I never wanted your money, Liam. I only wanted the truth." "And now you have both," he said softly. She smiled faintly through her tears. feeling something inside her finally settle the anger, the confusion, the ache. Maybe this was not the ending of their story. Maybe it was the beginning of one told honestly, for the first time,